Hey everybody, what's going on? We are back talking about a lens that could be my favorite Sigma lens to date for mirrorless systems. There have been a lot of reviews for the Sony E-mount, but what about the L-mount Alliance? That's what we're here to talk about today. The Sigma 85 1.4 DGDN. Let's talk about it. So before we get into this review, I do want to thank Sigma Singapore for helping us with the lens and the body. Having said that, my thoughts only on this. The first thing you're going to notice about the 85-1.4 is that it is a much smaller lens than the previous version. Case in point, look at this. This is really small and relatively light for being an 85 1.4 lens. So much so that when you first put it on, when you first see it, you might think this is a 35 or even a 50, but it's not. Because it's a mirrorless lens, Sigma's able to do a lot with this in a much smaller form factor, so you got to give them credit where credit's due. They've done a tremendous job. But there have been some improvements on the outside of this lens as well. Case in point is you got a really nice aperture ring that you can click or declick by the flick of a switch. Plus, you can aperture lock it. Now, aperture lock does not mean that you can set it to 1.4 and then click on the lock and you can't move it. No. If you set it to auto, you click on the lock, you cannot move the ring at that point in time. But any other aperture, of course, you can knock it out of the place. I wish you could aperture lock at every number. So if I want to be at f2, f1.4, I can lock it. But that's not the case with this lens. Also, you have your autofocus and manual focus switch, your AFL button as well. So you've got a lot of features on this lens that make it very, very usable and a step above other lenses out there on the market. Just the fact that you can declick and make this very good for video is a big plus for a lot of video shooters out there that want that kind of like a lot closer looking focal length for, you know, nice bokeh or depth of field, or if you want to do some nice B-roll, this 85 1.4 will definitely come in handy for that. Otherwise, though, the build quality is fantastic. It's a Sigma art lens, so you're going to get that fantastic build quality through and through. It feels really good on the camera. I tested this on the SL2, the S1R, and the FP right here, and it feels good on all three of these cameras, no issues at all. Anyway, that's it for the outside of the lens. Let's talk about what's inside. Looks like it's drizzling out here a little bit, but we are okay because this lens is weather sealed. Anyway, let's talk about what is inside of this bad boy. You have 5 SLD elements, 1 is spherical element, 4 HR elements, 15 elements, 11 groups. The weight of this lens is 625 grams. The filter diameter is 77 millimeters, and it's 11 bladed diaphragm on this, so you're gonna get a beautiful bokeh. Those little light bulbs in the background just circular, they're beautiful, they're stunning. This is a beautiful lens when you see the background on it. But it's also very, very light. The autofocusing system has been improved as well, so you're gonna get a much better system than the previous 85 1.4, which I wanna talk about right now in terms of usability. Now, when I use this lens, I've used it on the Leica SL2, the Panasonic Lumix S1R, and the Sigma FP, which I have on right now. I will say that the lens performs relatively the same on all 3 cameras, but I would say that the S1R and the FP, it's a little bit faster than, let's say, the SL2. This could be a firmware update from Leica that just needs to be updated to the system, then it'll be okay. It's not a deal breaker, but it's just slightly slower. But it's still relatively fast because I've had friends that shot with it go, wow, this is very impressive. And it is. But of course, you know, Sigma's gonna develop it best for their camera system, so why not? But when you get into continuous autofocusing, this is something that you need to take note of because these are all contrast-based systems, so it will hunt a little bit more so than, let's say, if it's on the Sony E-mount, but it still gets that picture in focus when you need it to be. I don't find a lot of missed shots with it, so there's no issues at all with it, but it's just something that you do have to take note of because when you're dealing with contrast-based systems, that continuous autofocusing can hunt a little bit more than usual. Besides that, though, the image quality out of this lens is just beautiful. This is a very, very sharp lens. And in the L-mount Alliance, there's really nothing that's competing with it, unless you want to put it to, let's say, the Leica, Summicron 75 f2 or the 90 f2. That's pretty much its only competitors out there because Panasonic doesn't have anything in the market besides the 51.4. But I mean, for the price point and what Sigma's done with this lens, for any L-mount users out there, it's a no-brainer. If you want a portraiture lens at 1.4. Anyway, the rain is coming down right now. I can't speak. Let's go into Lightroom. Let's take a look at images with the SL2, the S1R, and the FP, and then I'll give you my final thoughts after that. All right, let's take a look at images taken with the Sigma 8514, of course, with the Sigma FP, the Panasonic Lumix S1R, and the Leica SL2. Now, this, as I mentioned before, is a very sharp, high-performing lens with great bokeh. Let's talk about sharpness and fall-off in bokeh here for a second. Here's this gentleman who was on a motorcycle. He said, okay, we can take a photo of him. So a few of my friends and myself did that. This is with the 8514. And as you can see, it is very sharp. Great fall off from the hair to the background. As you can see, this was taken at 1.4 and the background is beautiful. I love how the bokeh renders on this lens. Now let's go on to some other photos of bokeh and in terms of foreground and background. Now here's some branches that were in front of this mosque, and I wanted to capture just some of the detail that you can capture here. So you can see it right here, the sharpness into the leaves, and then there's the great bokeh in the fall off and just kind of disappears into the background. And this is where this 85 1.4 really shines. Here's another shot of this, so you can see the detail in terms of this. This was I believe it's a spike or something on a fence. I don't know the proper name for it, but I thought it was interesting nonetheless with the branches coming through, that with the textures and the colors. And as you can see, it's very sharp through and through. It almost looks like a painting the way that the lens renders that bokeh in terms of how the leaves just sort of disappear into the background. Again, once again, very beautiful. Let's take another look at another picture of my friend Jason, who was taking a picture of me. And if we just punch on this, we can see very sharp through and through. And I was quite a distance away. So this is a high resolving, high performing lens. There's really not much to complain about this lens, as I mentioned before. In terms of autofocusing, I mentioned this is a contrast-based autofocusing system with all the L-mount camera systems. So if you want to do continuous autofocus, it will hunt at times. But if you're doing portraiture, street photography, or lifestyle, you should be okay. But I believe there will be a firmware update coming soon by Sigma that will address some of those issues. But nonetheless, it's just something to take note of. Here's a picture of a Grab driver walking through the crowd, again at 1.4, and you can just see the great background in there, the great separation, that 3D pop, which we all love on an 8514. And just some other photos here of these children that were kind enough to allow me to take their photo. Just lifestyle shots that I really enjoy. Just going through some of the images here. Look at this mosque right here. And if you want to see the sharpness and in terms of buildings, look at that all the way to the top, and it looks fantastic. But once again, this 8514 lens, as I mentioned before, for the price point, the build quality, I mean, if you have the means, of course, it's a lens I wouldn't pass up, because you're really going to get some fantastic image quality, not only for photography, but also for video as well. Okay, the rain is starting to come down, so here's my final thoughts on the lens. This is probably my favorite Sigma Prime lens to date, besides the 105 1.4. This is a phenomenal lens. It is sharp, as you've seen in the images, beautiful colors, beautiful image quality. The bokeh is astounding. I mean, they used to call the older 85 1.4 an autofocus Otis, and this new one is even better than that. So if you're on the fence with this, don't be on the fence, trust me. For the price point, this is a very hard lens to pass up. It's around $1,600 some odd dollars here in Singapore. And I think Sigma was having a promotion at some time where they were giving away a ceramic filter free of charge with the lens. I don't know if that promotion is still going on, but if it is, that ceramic filter will make sure you don't bust anything on this lens, on the front elements of it. But even then, without it, that price point, how do you not pick up this lens? It is beautiful. If you're into portrait photography, wedding photography, if you want to just shoot your kids for, let's say, if you're doing children photography, whatever, or just video, you want a nice lens for, let's say, great B-rolls or those epic B-roll shots and beautiful separation. It's hard to pass up this lens for the price point, the image quality, and the build quality. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Sigma 8514. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like always, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube. Anyway, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube. Be safe out there, stay out of the rain like we're trying to do right now, and we'll talk to you very soon. Take care.